Welcome to my lecture on Sinhala Numerals and Mathematics in Ancient Sri Lanka. This is a repeat presentation, which I did about a year back on Sinhala Numerals and Mathematics in Ancient Sri Lanka. So I'm Harsha Wijayawardhana. I'm from earlier from I'm from Theekshana Research and Development, which was started, the company that was started by University of Columbus School of Computing under the guidance of Professor V.K. Samaranaika, the late Professor V.K. Samaranaika, the founder of UCSC. Okay, let me first of all give an introduction to Sinhala numerals. A lot of people don't, in Sri Lanka even don't know that Sinhala people had numerals, and Sri Lanka, the ancient Sri Lanka had numerals. So I can actually break the numerals, basically the archaeological finding of numerals into three ages. That means I can group them into three ages, three segments, I would say. One is the ancient Brahmi numerals that we find in Sri Lanka. Then the second, medieval times that the Sri Lankans have used, or the Sinhala people have used, Sinhala civilization had used numerals. Then we come to the Kandyan period. So that's the period that a lot of people know about because it's a later period. So we find numerals, Sinhala numerals, in that period. So let me go back to why that we did this one. So there was a requirement that we had to encode numerals in our Unicode 0D basic multilingual plane of the Unicode and in our Unicode charts. And because of that, so we started it as a requirement for Unicode encoding. In somewhere in 1996, about 96, 97, Sri Lanka encoded Sinhala script in the Unicode. And so it was actually included in the basic multilingual plane of the Unicode somewhere in 96. Subsequently, for about, so at the time that when we encoded Sinhala script or the Sinhala characters, we had not encoded Sinhala numerals. Although Mr. Michael Everson, who had submitted a proposal for encoding, had included a set of numerals, what we call today Sinhala which did not have a zero. And that's the interesting part about that set of numerals. So let us go back and we can start on this. So the later subsequent years, there was another proposal by the Mr. Michael Everson. However, that it also did not have the set that you find today in the basic multilingual plane, what we call astrological digits. And so those came later. So that means I was involved in the encoding of astrological and the Sinhala Ilakkam in the respective places right now, what you have today with the Unicode charts. So let us go to let us go back to let us go back to the script. I'm sorry, the presentation. So the first thing that we will we'll basically go through is the agenda today. So the first part is research into Sinhala numeral, how it started, and the methodology. So we will go back we'll basically start from the from the latest period. So which is so that so I said that there are three periods. So the first period is about the first the first 500 years from the foundation of the Sinhala kingdom. That is about 500 BC, and then the Buddhism arrives in Sri Lanka in 300 BC. The Brahmi characters, the Brahmi script is very that the Sinhala people used to use Brahmi script, and from which evolved the Sinhala script today. So so that's the first period. Then the second, then the medieval times, that we have a certain medieval Sri Lankan kingdom, the Sinhala kingdom, that is because the Anuradhapura period lasted more than 1,000 years. And then you had the Polonnaru period, and subsequently that is right after about 1100 AD. From there onwards, that you have the rest of the kingdoms that you find. So the latter period is actually the Kandyan period. So we look at the numerals found in the Kandyan kingdom. That is when we lost our independence, or when Sri Lanka lost its independence to British in 1850. So there are the numerals. Then you have the Brahmi numerals that we will talk about. Then the importance of the zero, the duality of the zero, positional notation, all the zeros found in the world, current Khmer and Lao Tamil Seti Asian region, then the evolution of Devanagari and Tamil numerals, zero in the Sinhala and Tamil scripts, zero numbers and its operation. So we will also talk about the Puja Avaliya, one of the classics in Sinhala literature, and how it has treated the numbers, the large numbers, fairly big numbers that they are talking about. Then we are also going to basically talk about what we call the bricks that we found, the astrological numbers, so that we think we had identified them as Littilakam, or the astrological numerals, and those numerals have a zero. So we will talk about those because those are very important for numeral research. So how did we do the research into Sinhala? Before we actually did the fairly long research running for about more than a year. We went to some of the kingdoms like Anuradhapura kingdom, the ancient. So we actually went through the inscriptions, some of the older inscriptions. Then we went through Ola leaves in the Colombo Museum, and we also looked in. Basically, we went to the Kandy and the Kandy Museum as well. So we looked for Ola leaves as well. So that we basically went through all of them, and we did research, and not only the stone inscriptions, the inscriptions on basically on rock inscriptions. We also look at the bricks. We look at the coin collections. We looked at almost all of the inscriptions that we could actually think of. So the research into Sinhala numerals was carried out from both the linguistic and mathematical perspective. In their research, the researchers had looked specifically for the existence of zero in any form of numerations in the Sinhala language, since the invention of zero had been a major demarcation point in mathematics, and advancement in modern pure mathematics would have not been possible without having the concept of zero. Although the zero had been discovered and rediscovered independently by various civilizations in the world, it is now accepted that zero as an independent number was discovered and used for the first time by the Indian mathematicians, and it had been taken to the West by the Arabs. Al-Khwarizmi was the Arab mathematician that we had talked about in the Middle East. about the Indian numerals, and part of the Indian numerals, if the zero was there, with the rest of the numerals which are developed in India from Brahmi numerals. So I want to bring you a little bit of a about the mathematics here. I actually refer to E.T. Bell in his book, The Development of Mathematics, describes the development of zero by Indian mathematicians in the following manner. The problem of numeration was finally solved by Hindus at some controversial date before AD 800. The introduction of zero as a symbol denoting the absence of units or of certain powers of 10 in a number represented by the Hindu numerals has been rated as one of the greatest practical inventions of all time. So here, so we have a date. We have 800 AD. However, in my lecture that I'm going to show you that the evidence that we have, and we can prove to some extent, we can basically, we can say that Sri Lanka had a symbol for zero before 800 AD. So therefore, we can actually talk about that a little bit later. In the research into Sinhala numerals or numeration, the authors had, that means in my book, the numeration in the Sinhala language. So we have looked at the following: the papers, publications on Sinhala numerals, original documents which had some form of numerals or numerations, rock inscriptions, ola leaf page numbering, any evidence for zero in Sinhala numerals or numerations. Numismatics, which is the coins that you find. However, we also actually looked into some of the bricks. There are marks on bricks, in prefabricated, some of the prefabricated areas of buildings, something like stupas, for instance. Some of the things that you find today inside the stupas, some of them are prefabricated, and that was actually prefabricated and later on fabricated subsequently inside the stupa. So when they did that, they had markers, and they had marks to identify the location of these bricks, and so those what we call those also we looked into as part of our research. And in this study, in my study, which I did for 2 years, I looked at thoroughly of the shapes of numerals, because that was important for the designing of typography. And the shapes of several numeral sets which belong to Indic languages were also compared with of the numeral sets which were identified as numerals or numerations in the Sinhala language. The Indic numeral set which we were studied extensively were, we looked at the Thai, Lao, Burmese, or the Myanmar, and Malayalam numerals, and other than Devanagari and Tamil. Ola leaf collection in Kandy and Colombo, which we call the Colombo ones, what we call WAD Silla collection, and the Kandy. Kandy had so many ola leaves with, I will come back to the sets of numerals, which I was actually in awe. It was amazingly, I think there are a lot of, I think we should spend more time on collecting going through and documenting those ones. And actually, I saw the almanacs. I saw some of the textbooks on astrology. So, and also there were some documents, basically, the ola leaves actually were prepared for our Kandyan pageant, the Perahara. There was auspicious times. So these are auspicious times they had prepared for our Kandyan pageant that is normally in August. It had been found that 5 different types of numerations were used in the Sinhala language at the time of the invasion of the Kandyan kingdom by the British. Out of the 5 types of numeration, 2 sets of numerations were in use in the 20th century, mainly for astrological calculations. And to express traditional year and dates in ephemerides, the 5 types of sets of numerals or numerations are listed below. So basically, what we found ephemeris what we found was there were 5 the traditional year. So our traditional year, we exactly calculate the time uh, according to the sidereal calendar. So this is a sidereal calendar compared to tropical calendar the West uses today. The Eastern, basically the Indic astrology follows the sidereal calendar, where that um, the year begins in April nowadays. So it would have been about 1,000 year back, 2,000 years back. It would have been about 2 months, about a month, basically in March, somewhere in March. So it's about a month. Now there is a basically nowadays actually our New Year, the Sri Lankan New Year, or the Sinhala and Tamil New Year begins in Sri Lanka on the 14th April. When I was born in 1960s, the middle of 1960s, it was on the 13th of April. So what you see is the first one, which you don't have zero here. So the first part that what you are seeing is what we call a single ilakam. So that this is actually, I have taken it from the Mendis Gunasekara. There is a book which was written by him, Mudliya Mendis Gunasekara, in the 1890s. And this comprehensive grammar of Sinhala language, so that what you see basically the Sinhala ilaka, which does not have a zero. However, it's a very elaborate type of set of numerals. You can see the kind of a curvy set of numerals. And that curvy set of numerals, you will see that there is a symbol for number 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, likewise. Then you have the same thing. I call these archaic Sinhala numerals. And this actually come from the catalog of palm leaf manuscripts in the Library of Colombo Museum, Volume 1, compiled by W.D. Silla, published by the government printer in 1938. So the third one is a very interesting piece of, this is a pocket watch, what you are seeing on the third one. Third one is a pocket watch. And very interestingly, our day, basically so we have a Sinhala hours, we call it Sinhala hours, or we call it in Sinhala hora. Hora actually is a Latin word for that also. But Sinhala basically being an Indo-European language, so that we have a word which comes directly from Sanskrit. This particular watch was given to Raja Rajasingha, which is the one, our last king was Sri Vikrama Rajasingha, who was a Nayakar. He's actually from India. His family was from India, from South India. He was actually Telugu speakers, and they were Telugu speakers. And this particular Sri Lankans, those days, the Sinhala people used 60 Sinhala hours per day. So our day normally our day begins, according to the astrological sidereal calendar, it begins in the morning with the sunrise. And it ends basically beginning and the end in the morning. That's how we actually do the beginning and the end. So the previous day it normally begins the morning with the sunrise. As the sun crosses the ascent, basically the horizon, we call that's the beginning of a day. And then the next day is 60 hours hence the next day. So this actually based upon the based upon the calculations right now, even to this day we perform, and we basically actually based our calculation based upon a astrological treatise that was written by Aryabhatta, who was an Indian mathematician. And some actually say, in fact, he talks about the best sunrise, and he refers to the best sunrise to Sri Lanka, the Trincomalee to the Trincomalee. So this watch is quite interesting watch. It was given by the Dutch to the king that is uncle of the last king, Rajadiraja, and there you had 30 normally you have 12 hours for 24-hour day. Likewise, that this watch had 30 days in Sinhala. So it was given 30 hours in Sinhala, not 30 days, 30 hours in Sinhala. So that the pocket watch had. So it's a beautiful piece of gold-plated watch that you can see it at the Colombo Museum today. The next one is another very interesting document, which actually until that I found out that Sinhala Ilakkam or the Sinhala numerals were there. Until that I actually said it, and a lot of people didn't realize it. This is the convention that we signed between the British and the Sinhala noblemen, and this had 13 clauses, and those clauses are numbered on the right-hand side with the Sinhala the passages or the clauses, Sinhala clauses, and actually numbered with Sinhala Ilakkam. So that which I have actually circled or the squared in red is actually Sinhala Ilakkam 1. So the corresponding number of the clause is in Hindu-Arabic numerals on the left-hand side. So these are this is the convention, and these are the shapes. So on the top part, you will see the shapes. There are two rows here. The first row, it shows you the numerals, the candy, where the convention, the numerals that you find for 11 clauses, actually. In fact, 11 clauses. I'm sorry that it was not 13 clauses, it was 11 clauses. And the second row shows you the shapes of the what the Mendes Gunasekara had actually documented in his book. So so this is so I use these shapes, that one that on top of that, the top row, basically the Sinhala Ilakkam row, not the Hindu-Arabic numerals, that I use those shapes for my font designing for the when we design the fonts, numeral fonts for the Unicode charts. So then the next one is another very interesting set. And I tend to sort of actually, this is where the greatest part of the Sinhala mathematicians, what we call them Ganitas, and this one has a 0. So this is the W. De Silva on Lithilakkam, which is the same book that I have taken, or the same index. In fact, if you go through this one, they had the same one. It is from the archaic, this one, the Library of Colombo, Catalog of Palm Leaf Manuscripts. So same thing is here from that. So I have basically used the Lithilakkam, or the astrological, which I call them a Lithilakkam. Actually, it's called Lithilakkam. Lit means, I would say, ephemeris in Sinhala, and the Ilakkam is numerals. So the lit or the so we call it astrological numbers, astrological numbers, not astrological numerals. And so these actually, when we look at it, they're very interestingly, they look just as except for two symbols here, the other ones are the two symbols, yes. Here, those are normal consonants that you find. However, I later on found out actually those are symbols. Some other reason they had evolved to the similar shapes like our consonants or the alphabet or the characters, and that may be because that um, the evolution of or the adoption of typewriter. Sometimes the printers would have used whatever they could find because they looks very similar to basically to um, the shapes of the Sinhala characters. So the first one is what we call a kombua. The second one is we call it na, ja, the, and the sixth is actually called I'm sorry. Um, it's Akma. Then the seventh one is a very interesting one. This is where I found out later on. Actually, I came to the conclusion that these are same shapes. You know, the number seven from Brahmi, even in Indian numerals, they remain the same. The shapes remain the same throughout. So here it looks like a U, the letter U, but it's not letter U. It's actually looks seven. If you look at it, it looks seven. U, if you write it in Sinhala, on the top part of it, it looks number seven. So I basically concluded with looking at the shapes, and these basically would this set, the Littilakam, what we call them today, actually evolved from the Brahmi numerals. But if you go to the Littilakam has a beautiful number seven. Now look at the number seven. Number seven would have evolved from basically the Brahmi 7, which we will look at the Brahmi 7 later. Okay, these are several sets. So there are two versions I saw in the museum. And so these versions this is the one actually I quote from Hendrik de Silva. It's one of the top astrological textbooks in Sri Lanka written in Sinhala. So there is a very interesting one. You can see there's another piece of evidence here where that 0 and this is a 10. So they have not even given 0, actually number 10. The number 10 with this halanta, instead of the halanta that you will find the WSILA collection, you will find with the modifier, vowel modifier with the halanta, because that they could not, perhaps I think that they couldn't print without the other one, that means without binding into a either character or a vowel modifier. So this is another one. These are some of the oldest astrological numbers. You will see number 1. These are page numbering. They had used astrological numerals for page numbering as well. So there you have a number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. 6 is Akma, and this is 7. 7 looks very like a U, the letter U. And then the R, that is 8, 7 and 8 and 9. And then here is the number 10. There is what we call a komwa that represents the sound. This is not actually it's not basically this is a vowel modifier in our case, and when you write in single letters. However, this is not a vowel modifier. Again, what you are seeing is the evolution of number 1 with the number 0, which is a Halkirim, right? So this is from actually all the leaves that I found at Candy Museum, and some of them are from Candy, some of them are from the WC collections in Colombo Museum. So there are a lot of ola leaves with these Littilakam. So this is actually this is basically a ephemeris that which has all the zodiac sign, I mean the planets transits actually with the degrees in particular zodiac sign. This is an ola to teach astrology, again from 600 or 1700, fairly old one, so you can see all the numbers there. This is my father-in-law's horoscope, prepared in early 1930s in Matale. It has a combination of Littilakam as a version found in Kenyan period in 1700 and the Littila. So there are two versions that you find. As I told you, the two version of Littilakam. So these two versions that I have given the oldest versions. However, I'm sorry, not the basically that what I'm trying to say is that this is the for my father-in-law in 1930s in Matale. So they use the Hindu-Arabic numerals as well as they have used the old Littilakam for that or the astrological numbers. So this is a very interesting combination of the both that you can, and this is what we call this calculation in Sinhala, we call it a Tundalita. And this is this is what you see. And with the planets in the horoscope, by the way, our horoscopes actually are from the Bengal tradition. And so these horoscope, that's what we are finding right now. Not the not North Indian tradition, not the South Indian tradition, it's a Bengali tradition. So from the Kalinga. So this is another very interesting one. Again, it shows the Litilakam by the P. Skularatna, one of the principals of Ananda, who is a mathematician, who is also he's a teacher of mathematics, and basically in his encyclopedia that where that is showing this is in the encyclopedia, single encyclopedia, by the way, not in his end, there's a single encyclopedia. He had basically submitted a paper on this Litilakam. So you'll find Litilakam. But actually, this is wrong. Some of the ones are wrong. I'll show you what are the ones wrong. Here, the 20 is wrong. 10 is fine, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 is also fine, 17 fine, 18, 19, 20 is wrong. 20 you have to have 2, that means number 2, the one that you see there, and then you can have basically 0 here. So they have made a mistake. By the way, so this is another very interesting one. The next one, which I'm actually showing, that is in Sinhala. Remember Mudliya, Mudliya Gunasekara had written the book in his comprehensive Sinhala language in English. But this one is in Sinhala, and in English one, you didn't have astrological numbers. Now here that you are showing the astrological numbers, in fact, it says that we use, instead of halanta or halkirima, we use a 0 here, the symbol for 0 right now, what we use today. So, so basically it has given, and it has given all the letter names that they normally use. But anyway, basically, yeah, they are basically given for, they have documented. So you can see the large numbers are written in astrological numbers, 1897, then the 0, the 1897, 1547, 102, all of them have been written in, they have written, he had written large numbers with the Litilaka. So the other ones I'm going to go quickly. There is something called Katapayadi, which again, the Katapayadi was actually they used in the southern, in South India. This is a very interesting encoding, which in fact, there's an amazing thing that what they have done in old days. This is actually for them to memorize, and numbers are written in letters. So the Khattapaya letters, they are called Khattapaya. There are letters that have been given for numbers of a 0. There are few letters were given. I'm sorry, for 1 to 10. There's a 1, you have a Khattapaya for, that means you can use any of those letters and you can create a word. So once we create the word, from left to right, it's a word, meaningful word, Shakabadam, for instance. But from the right to left, you have what we call a number. So Khattapaya is a unique numbering scheme where number 1 to 9 and 0 have been depicted by single consonants. The Khattapaya is this is the numeration. This numeration is known as a Khattapaya since number ones are allocated with a single letter Khattapaya. In this tradition of writing numbers, the year 2007 can be written, for instance, Kha, Na, Sa. Traditionally, 2000 will be written from the right to left. and the 702 left from right to left. So normally it's a 7002, but then from the you're already using vowel modifiers. The words in Sanskrit will be created for the year 2007, 7002, right to left, with allocated letters for 7002. When reading, one has to remove the vowel modifiers. Khatapayadi was widely used by South Indian astrologers, and some Chola rock inscriptions in Sri Lanka rock inscriptions, right, of Chola rock inscriptions in Sri Lanka have dates inscribed in Khatapayadi. So by the way, Cholas occupied Sri Lanka. We became part of Chola Mandalam in that's where our Anuradhapura period, Anuradhapura kingdom, which lasted for 1,200 years, well, ended with the Chola occupation. We became for 70 years. We were part of the Chola Mandalam. So later on, the rising of the Sinhala kingdom in Polonnaruwa marked the end of the Chola occupation. Sorry. So these are Katapai has been given. So this could be traced back to the Aryabhatta. He had also introduced, you can see a zero, a letter for zero, right? So traditionally there is another one called Swara, our Swara, or the letters as a numeration in page numbering in all the leaves, starting from Ka as a consonant, and we have about 544 basic combinations with a like Ka, 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 then key, likewise, for each and every consonant in our alphabet, and we create combinations, and we have about 544. So for a one cycle, and then it will start with a dvi. So especially the books, the Buddhist books are written, numbered using this particular Ola leaves particular combination, using this katapaya. I'm sorry, the swara or the consonants. So now I want to take you to a little bit earlier period, which is right now what you are seeing is all these two sets had evolved from Brahmi numerals. So this is the old Brahmi that you find in Sri Lanka. And so we have found, so there is a Brahmi numerals, and this is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here is a 7. You can see the 7 had not changed much. Then you have 8 and 9. Then you have 10. In India, it's it's horizontally. You have to basically shift it to horizontally. This is the Sri Lankan, the 10, the Brahmi 10 that you find in Sri Lanka. But so then you have 20, 30, 40, all. So some of these symbols are not there, but though that we think they are not there, in my view is that they are here. So I can show you somewhere other places where rock inscriptions where you find some of these, right? And then you have for 100, you have a symbol, then 1,000, you have a symbol. So you can see that. So this is the evolution that you find in 2nd century AD of Brahmi. Let me put it this way. So that's that 10 in Brahmi. Brahmi, you have a symbol. And of course, I have given the evolution of Brahmi numerals. But one thing I must tell you, Sri Lanka there are certain uniqueness about Sri Lanka, and that you can find basically if you when you go through the rock inscriptions. Right, now let me, this is a very important part of it actually, what we are going to talk about here. So this is something really that you may not find in India. You can see the positional notation. Well, you can see the evolution of positional notation in Sri Lanka. They use a symbol called karihi. Normally, what they call it a karihi symbol. You can see in this particular one. This I have taken this from in Sinhala book, which they have documented the Brahmi numerals, the large numbers here. So the first one is a karihi sign. Karihi sign. That karihi is actually symbol basically to indicate, it's basically to indicate it's kind of like a measurement of how would I say, paddy, for instance. So this particular symbol is very important. On the left-hand side, you can see the curry sign. You can see in the middle also, but in between, you will see very interesting, you will find a very interesting part. Here you have written a 603. So what they have done is they have two piles. So one pile, basically on the right, the extreme right-hand side, this is the first row that I'm talking about. In the second, the picture here. So the image that you have, you find in this presentation slide. The first one on the for you to see. So the first one, the first row, what you will see is, well, let me bring it to my pointer to. So this one and this one. So now here is a curry sign. This one is also a curry sign. And this one is number 3, right, in Brahmi. But let me go here. Now you can see number 6 here. And you have 100. So there are 6 of 100. So these are one pile. Here again, now let me show you. There is a number 4, and there are 4 of 100. So there's a 400. Then you add, there is here a 10 and plus 7. So there are, so what I'm trying to show you is, so you know the first, so you have the first 0 in when we write number. First one denotes the first first column denote 100. So basically, I'm sorry, the 10. The next one is a 10. So you multiply by 10 actually. So basically there is a 1. If it is a number 1, then it will be a column that you have on the, you will start from the right. So this is exactly what they have done here. So the right, further right, you will see the 0 to 9. The second one, what you have is, normally when we write, second one is tens, right? So there were 40 up to 90. Then the third one, it's about hundreds. So 340, you write 340. 340. It's the same thing what we have done here. However, you can see now since there is no 0, so what they have done is basically you have the 100 of the Brahmi 100, then 3, so that together there's a multiplication here basically, right? Or adding, basically what you're saying, this column tells you how many of what, or if it is silent, it will be 100, right? So if let's go from here, you can see the 50 and then 5. Then we go here, you can see there's a 4, there is a 100. So basically what you are saying is you need to basically you need to add that means how many 400s, and that's 400, and there is a 20, 420. So that's how you write. So here is 1,000, and this is 100. This is again a career sign. There's 100 here. So that's what it is. So basically, basically how the evolution of the positional notation, very well documented with the Karhi sign in Sri Lanka. So that's something that I think a lot of people don't realize, that the Sri Lanka has the evolution very well, nicely documented, right? And this was going to continue for some time. Like for instance, when we do the astrological calculations, I had not seen any fractions. Instead, what they have done is basically they have they have columns. They have let's say you have the degrees, then you have seconds, minutes and seconds. I'm sorry, minutes and the seconds. So there are 3 columns, and the first column tells you that's in again decimals, right? Up to 30 degrees. The next one again, the 60. The next one is also 60, right? Um, so basically what you are saying is the degrees are there, then you have uh, the minutes and the seconds, right? So this is another very interesting, this is called Stargate in Sri Lanka. However, why I have put all this here, why I have brought this particular, the whole Stargate of Ranmasuviyana in Anuradhapura period, this may be not a Stargate per se, what we see it in Egypt or in South America. What we are seeing is perhaps um, the map of the world, or but there is a funny things here. There is a 90 that you find in India, for instance. So it's here. So with the Brahmi 90. Okay. So I decided to show you fairly old what we know of zeros. Now, like for instance, the symbols for zero. So the first one you have is the K127, which is very famous. In fact, Dr. Axel, in his book Finding Zero, basically goes to this what you call Camel Stella. So here that you will see 605 in Shaka year, 605. It's about 683 in AD. Then there is a second one here that is about 7th century. So this is about 7th century, somewhere in 7th century. This is called Gwalior zero, 270. So let me show you the 270. Let me show you the 605. You can have a dot here. In fact, this is the 5, right? Very interestingly, I want to basically talk about something very interesting that when if you instead of writing this dot, if you use a halkiri, right, you will find that this looks very much like with litilakam. So this number 1, this is 0, I'm sorry, this 6, I'm sorry, 6, I'm sorry, there's this 0, this 5, but it looks very much like, right, you have seen ACMA, right? Acma is like the top one. And then you have a Hal, Halanta, and then the 5. Let me later on, I'll talk about something very interesting when I talk about Pujavaliya, where that we call 0 a Bindu, which may be either a dot or an oval shaped 0 that you find here. So this is a later 0 that in India. So this would have been a much older one, so that it had gone from India to Khmer, most probably, although that a lot of the Axel, Dr. Axel, Amir Axel, in fact, he talks, and when in his book, Finding Zero, he talks about particularly this stela, which is a 605 stela. That 605, apparently he thinks older than the Gwalior. Obviously, it's older than Gwalior, which is a 270. Here, this on in a Kovil temple in Gwalior in the North India. So, but then we know that this particular one on the left-hand side is an older 0, referring to older symbol, which would have been in India as well, perhaps, although that we don't find commonly in India right now. But yeah, but then Bakshali manuscript is a good example. You will see the dot in there. Tamils did not have a 0. However, to make it a pure consonant, we put a dot. And the dot actually represents 0 here. Well, when we talk about zeros, those zeros, we cannot talk about without we cannot talk about the 0 without talking about Mayans. The Mayans are the people that I know of. The only the other civilization that they had basically discovered 0. So here, what you are seeing is the Mayan 0. It's like a shell, and you can see how that they had worked out. And it's in fact they were not documenting with base 10 decimals, but instead of 20. So you can see how they have done it. You know that hexadecimal is actually used for the computers, and likewise they have used basically 20. You can see how the 20 is done here. Okay, so that's very interesting to see. Right, let us a little bit talk about the evolution of that. So I want to bring here the camera, and also remember the camera stella that you saw earlier. So these are the numeral sets that you'll find it. So the first one is what we call Littilakam. So I go back to 1700, Ola. So this is the version, the first version of it, version 1. And you can see 1, 2 there. Then the Halkirima with the Hombua looking, or the vowel modifier with the 1. So the 1 is 0. So as I told you, that you could use an oval shape 0 if you instead of the Halkiri. The next one is the Thai numerals. You can see the Thai numerals, but look at the similarity that you find with Littilakam. So you can just look at it. You will find that they are very similar. I mean, so I was shocked by that. In fact, is the camera again, the camera in the bottom. So you can see those. In fact, the other side. So we tend to think that Halan or Halkirima would have used by Sinhalese. There's a reason. The writing utensils, right? The writing utensils would have not permitted, right, how you write the Ola. So the writing utensils would have not allowed you to put a dot, right? So one of the things is that you need to find out, because the evolution of Littilakam is actually due to the way you write on Ola as well. So a lot of this evolution is also why it's cursive also same. You basically you can't write the way that you write in Sinhala, for instance. So if you go through my book, Numeracy Sinhala Language, and I talk about all of this. So basically the way that we had written our Sinhala script, it also had an impact upon why we did not use a oval shape because there is a very similar looking Anushwara in Sinhala alphabet, and maybe that's why they didn't want to use that as well. So anyway, what it looks like, Littilakam is either parallel to basically with the the Indian numerals or the Kama numerals. Parallel to that, the evolution would have happened. And so Halkirima perhaps slightly older than the dot. So there is a possibility. So this is what you see is right now the Tamil evolution. Tamil does not have 0. You can see that Tamil 10 comes in the bottom. That is from my book. I have actually taken the evolution directly from the Indian, some Indian scholars that they have, who have actually documented that. So you can see that number 10 has a particular symbol in the Tamil numerals. So this is actually the Arabic numerals. Only on the second row, that is basically what you are using is the Sanskrit on top, right? So you can see the dot is there. The dot. So basically, instead of the oval shape 0, what you have is a dot. So this is how the index works. The index 0 is 0 to 9. Second index is the index 1, the radix, basically. Then the number 2 is 100. Then number 3 is, so it's a positional notation that we are talking about. So this is how I my perception of, oh no, this is not my perception. Actually, we can talk about that later on. This evolution of the Devanagari numeral evolution. So the bottom one, in fact, this is the simulation that I have done with the computer, how the Sinhala evolved. So that you have this. So the same thing could be applied for the what you call the Lithilakam evolution as well. So let me I want to talk about quite a little bit of about the zero and something as zero as a number. So I had this problem in my book. I finish it with a paragraph. In fact, I will read it to you. In fact, that paragraph is very important because I wrote this book about 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago. So I'm writing. So I will actually basically read from my book. Imports of single zero. Hitherto many scholars believed that the zero was not used in the single language. Apparent use of Lithilakam provides a clue that the zero had been used in astrological calculation in Sri Lanka. There are no clues as to whether the zero was used as a number in its own right in ancient Sri Lanka with its own operations. I know that is now wrong. We know that Sinhala mathematicians knew about the operations. Otherwise, you can't do the astrological calculations. And they have used it. That means Brahmagupta, for instance, Brahmagupta in his book talks about the operations of zero. Like, for instance, where that 1 times 0 is 0, 1 times 1, basically 1 times 0 is 0, 0 times is 0, 0 divided by 0 is infinity. You know that those are the operations. Brahmagupta actually, Brahmagupta Siddhanta, right, in 628 AD, talks about it. In fact, Indians have come across, even had gone through the negative numbers subsequently later on. Which I went through some of the Varahamihira, for instance, basically talking about integrals. So not the Lebins or the Newton were not the original founders of the calculus, the calculus in the world. So it was Indians. In fact, what I have found out is actually in the Puchavadiya, not only it has a large numbers, also that is actually talks about a bindu, talks about limits. So it's a basic principles of calculus is already there. So it's a very interestingly that the author of Puchavadiya talks about how the calculus or the principles of integrals could be used to prove that with the using limits, how that it can be used to see, in fact, how that they could be used to find out the volume, or basically, or the volume, or the volume, especially volume. I think the volume when you pulverize the what you call the tallest mountain according to them. And then he says is when you take the limits, it does not reach basically it actually less than 0. Then the Puchavadiya also has 10 to the power, the numbers, large numbers. It talks about large numbers. But come to the 130, 10 to the power 138 for Asankya. So all this actually done by the Mayurapada Stavira, who actually wrote Puchavadiya somewhere around 1200, somewhere around 1100, 1200. So the 1200, and in fact, we know that this particular, we don't know exactly who it is, Mayurapada Stavira, or what we know only as a monk who actually, who resided at the temple called Mayurapada in Dambadini. So Dambadini is another kingdom after Polonnaru period, and which was moved from Anuradhapura to Polonnaru to Yapahu and Dambadini. So that Dambadini and Yapahu. So then later on to Kurunagara. So there's a very short periods, but these are very short periods. And this Mayurapada was a is a scholar who lived at Mayurapada temple. So he basically, there's another very interesting about it. There's another interesting about it is that he says that in the universe, all the particles of the universe that you find, it will be less than 10 to the power 80. And even to this day, is a 10 to the observable universe has only less than 10 or the less than or equivalent to 10 to the 18, 10 to the power 80. So these are the limits that, in fact, that's the passage that I have taken from Mayurapada Stavira. These are the limit definitions of the derivatives. So we have basically Sinhala mathematics. In Sinhala mathematics, I don't want to go into details of Sinhala mathematics, which I will do with another basically with another lecture. And what I have to say is literally that though that in my first book, Enumeration of the Sinhala Language, that I talk about that not knowing basically that whether Sinhala mathematicians had treated the zero as a number, but what I have to tell you is right now they had treated this as a zero as a number, and also they had known the operations. Otherwise, they could have done the calculations, but they had done. There's another thing about Pujavali, which I want to actually. I'm writing my second book, and where that I actually talk about that, which in fact now I am finishing those chapters. In that book, which in the future, that's going to happen in the future, which we will publish it, so that you can basically look at it. At the moment, what I'm developing is that it actually talks about a bindu. A bindu is a dot, or the bindu again is the same as the Indian zero, bindu. So he refers to bindu. So there is two words to differentiate the zeroness or the emptiness, what we call it, emptiness, voidness. He used the word shunya. Shunya is the one which becomes how that the shunya is the word that actually becomes zero in English. So how it happens is shunya becomes a emptiness or the empty, and in Arabic it's become safiro. The safiro becomes zero. So that's how it actually goes into the through the Al-Khazmi, who actually introduced this to the Middle East, the Indic, they were in the Indic numerals, and that set of numerals actually goes to Italy through Genoa. So that is how it happens. So where that basically in our Pujavaliya, that the classic actually talks about Bindua. Bindua to differentiate the emptiness or the voidness. So the Bindua is actually the number. So it's actually that Mayurapada Stavira actually takes this as a number, let's say, number. It's a number as a zero as a number. So that's why he tries to differentiate between the shunya and Bindua. So there are, in a nutshell, let me again repeat that the Sinhala zero or the single zero that we find, the mathematicians of the ancient Sri Lanka, they knew a number. Basically, they knew that they knew about zero. They knew about the operations. They used it for astrological calculations. In addition to that, they also knew the difference between the voidness, or what they have used for the voidness, and the zero. Of course, so there are lots of other things actually we can talk about, but basically what I want to reiterate is that that Sinhala mathematicians or the Ganitas knew about it. And the interesting part is now we have to find out, when did they know about it? When did they introduce that? Very interesting. So let us go to the next slide. So this is another interesting one. We found out, that's a very interesting about it. We found out that the Sinhala, basically the zero had crept into our script. So the good one is here, how the Hal Lakuna is used. Actually, Hal Lakuna is a nullifier. So what they nullify is there is a inherent vowel in our consonants, a k, and actually in order to make it a pure consonant, we put the hal. And in fact, the dot on the Tamil the Tamil letters. Now here the dot is again a 0. That's what it depicts. Hal kirim is also a 0. To some extent, that's a nullifier, I can call it. So so how do we write K, for instance? It's a good example here. You have the A vowel modifier, which depicts it with what we call a combo that comes before a consonant, not a after consonant. This is interesting. So now here the K, you can see, you write it with a combo, which is the A sound, with a K, so it becomes K. But if I want to increase the sound, so we have a K, what we do is we put a K, basically make it with the hal or the halanta, and then the A sounds get amplified. That's what we do. But if you look at in Tamil, there is a kombu with the two knots. There's a one knot in the bottom, that's also A sound. In order to increase that one, so you put the, without using the halkirim or the halanta, like what we do here in Sinhala. So basically this is exactly how we write 10, for instance, right? What we are doing is that you remove whatever that is there in the first column, 0 to 9. Now you put a 0 there. And then you increase by 10, putting the left one, immediate left to that one, or immediate after that, or 2 zeros and immediate after that, you put a 1, which means 1, when you put it in there, you have increased by 10. The first index, first index, and the second index with 100. So the 0 has now given the duality. It shows a 0 in here and shifting it. So it's exactly the way that we write this K, for instance. So right, so that you can see there is a sign for long E instead of single halant operation, right? Okay, then now we come to the next very interesting part. And which year did Sinhala Ganitias basically discover the 0? So that's something that we have to now look at the evidence. So there was accidentally, I saw certain bricks that we discovered at the Sigiri Museum. Those bricks were brought from, there is a stupa called Manikdena Stupa in Dambulla. That's in the middle of Sri Lanka, in the road that takes from Colombo, the road that actually connects Anuradhapura, the ancient kingdom. From that particular road, Dambulla road, you will find main road that you will find the man. So there is a Manikdena. This is called a Manikdena, the stupa. Interestingly, these bricks were, that means inner, what you call the inner sancta, built another small stupa with bricks, and these bricks were numbered, prefabricated, because they are circular ones, prefabricated. That means assembled, prefabricated in the sense they were assembled, and they were basically the bricks were made they were manufactured, and probably normally when you bricks, you have to put in the fire. You had a fire, and then you had to make mud. You had to make them bricks. And once they do that, before they do that with the clay, they used to make numbers. They know the shape. They'll make the shape, and then before they created it, they would have marked it, and marking, assemble, prefabricate, and then later they would have brought them, and they would have fabricated this inner sanctum of the stupa. So the inner casket-like thing, it's like made of out of bricks, and these bricks had numbered, right? So my initial this thing was, basically Hallakuna came somewhere in 4th century. That's in Sigiri period. So my original, basically my hypothesis was, and actually I was basically guessing, was that this Halkirim, since the Halkirim came into existence in Sigiri period, I thought that actually this came in somewhere in 4th century. So that means it predates the Gwalior or that even the Camastella. So that's my initially my thoughts. Well, my thoughts were actually, I can't say that. My initial thoughts were actually that this would be somewhere in 7th to 8th century, because I thought that. So anyway, we looked in. So we accidentally saw this. So all these numbering. So the numbers actually what I saw stamped because I couldn't take photographs. Later on, this Dr. Kusum Sirikoditwa, who was who was actually the curator at the Sigiri Museum. Later on, he met me. It was a trip that we took to Sigiri. And so we discovered it's a late evening when we discovered it. The following morning that I met the curator, and the curator showed me the stampage, what they had done. So I couldn't take photographs at that time. Because I had to. So when I came back to Colombo, I documented the way I remembered it. You can see that very interestingly, you can see number 1, something's in number 1. Actually, I saw very interestingly, I actually guessed it. It was definitely, this is nothing, this is not anything else. These are not characters, because you can't have a character, you can't have a sound or a kombua after character. So you can see what you are seeing right now is something very similar to number 2, number 4, Brahmi number 4, number 7 is there. You can, but then I saw a very funny thing about it also. They had basically the right in the middle, there was a line. They had drawn a line. So that also, like now today the 0, you actually to differentiate between the letter O and 0, you normally draw a line, you strike it. So the same thing I saw. Yeah. So these are the numbers that what you are seeing right now, which I saw. That was a very interesting thing. I saw not only this consonant and looking like consonant, but they are not consonant. They look like numbers. Then later on, I realized they are numbers, and I told at that time to Dr. Kusum Siri somewhere in 2007, 2008. Later on, I completely forgot about it. I came back to Colombo, and I added a chapter to my book. That was the final chapter as an appendix. And then I sent it to publishers. Subsequently, I met Dr. Kusum Siri because of the fact that Professor Nalin, this lecture was first done by Professor Nalin Disilla, wanted me to do the lecture, and he had this idea that the Buddhism would have created. Buddhist country could have been the only country that could create a 0. So here we are now talking about it. So that Dr. Nalin actually asked me whether there is any possibility to, so when I talked about Mathematicsinancientsrilanka, and he wanted to date it. So that when we looked at Mathematicsinancientsrilanka, how many times it was built, rebuilt. The first time it was created in the 4th century. So that's again right. It was again had certain things to, they had done something somewhere around 6th and the 7th century. So you can say any of these prefabricated inner sanctum of the stupa would have been done either from 4th century onwards, anywhere between 4th century up to 8th century. So, anyway, so the interesting part, so the evolution of version 1 of Lithilakan, this is what I have put it in there. And I'm very much sure that would have happened somewhere between 5th to 7th century or 8th century. So this can predate. In fact, it could be possible. Predate Gwalior, even the so that's the surmise. That's the what we thought actually personally also thought. So these are the real stampage that you are seeing. You can see the ones that I have drawn. You can see that one. So I saw the number 10. So definitely, so we can say Lithilakan would have or had originated in somewhere in between 4th and 8th century. So definitely that it would be somewhere, even it could even, my guess is it could be even predate. So we are trying to now carbon date it. And so the furnace where that you can see that, so we can see, we can take it and we can take a piece out of this and we can figure it out whether it's a, so most likely right now the evidence basically evidence points to 4th century or the 5th century, right after Sigiri period or the bin in between the Sigiri period, so that we have the zero, the coming from Sri Lanka. So the Bakshali is much earlier, right? You have to understand Bakshali manuscripts are much earlier. So somewhere in 4th century. So it's between 4th century. So it's one of the oldest. So we see so in a nutshell, I can summarize this. So we see the evolution of decimal evolution in Sri Lanka. I showed you the piles. I showed you right now in the Manik-Dena. I'm now telling you that there is Litilaka with a zero is there. Otherwise, you can't have this, these are actually that what you're seeing right now is with a strike. This I tend to think is a 91. This is a positional notation that you are seeing. So it's kind of interesting. So this is a very interesting evolution that you are seeing right now. So we need to now date this and in the sense carbon date it. And you can see the positional notation and you have the zero. You have all of this here. So it's basically my hypothesis, then also that we have clear evidence that the Litilakam, what we see in the Kandyan period for astrological calculations and the numbering of Ola and all of that, and a lot of Ola books, Ola leaves in the Kandyan Museum where somebody has to read through. So the Litilakam started in this particular the period. So this is a Sigiri period. So that's 4th century. So it's either in parallel with the Indian zero or with the Kama stela that Dr. Amir Axel talks about. But if this is one of the very first zeros that we are looking at. Okay, so this is again, maybe the 5, maybe 7. So there's a very interesting, the bricks and the what you call the clay, the pieces, what you are seeing right now is actually from a pot, perhaps, that's written in a very, the latter period of Anuradhapura. You can see maybe to 8th to 9th century. So you don't see on bricks and on these Litilakam. You see, probably they would have used the Ola leaf to write these numbers at that time. So anyway, so what you're seeing is this. So before I end, so I like to sort of actually give you in a nutshell the history of numeration in Sri Lanka is fairly, I think it has started from the Brahmi. So we have oldest Brahmi in Sri Lanka, perhaps the 5th century that we have now clear evidence, not in the 3rd century. We have written with some of the tools, because of the tools that they became curved. So what I need to basically repeat is that these are some of the oldest numerals that you are seeing right now. Is the cousin of the Indo-Arabic numerals, what we use throughout the world. So we have used zero, we have known the calculations, we have known the operations, we have done the calculations with this particular set. So we have evidence for that in the 1700s and even the Kotte period. I think there is evidence that the Litilakam was used. However, there was another interesting thing. There was a very interestingly, we had also used the other set as without the zero. So that had come to the Kandyan period without any change. So that especially in the royal palace, for some other reason, they had used that particular version. And if you want to write to me, I have given my personal email address, wijayawardhana@gmail.com. And I welcome you to write to me. You can ask any questions. And my second lecture, I will touch upon the mathematics of ancient Sri Lankan mathematics, and the construction of very old stupas, how they did it. I thank you very much.